Hey there, my friend. This is Dr. Anthony Balduzzi, founder here at the Fit Father Project and the Fit Mother Project. And I want to welcome you to this wonderful episode of our podcast where we're joined by special guest expert, Dr. Barrie Tan. And this is going to be a good one because, believe it or not, Dr. Tan is the world's foremost expert on vitamin E. Yes, vitamin E. This vitamin that many of us have heard of, but not many of us know what it actually does. And it turns out that vitamin E is one of the keys to actually reducing inflammation in the body and protecting all of these special fats in the body. As Dr. Tan's going to explain in this wonderful conversation, all of our cells, the trillions of cells in our bodies, they're surrounded by this fatty layer, this phospholipid bilayer. And vitamin E and the right kinds of vitamin E actually help protect that layer. It has an antioxidant function. It has an anti-inflammatory function. And it's just so cool that we're here with the world's foremost expert on this stuff. And he actually will tell you about the special form of vitamin E that he identified in these special annatto plants down in South America that have profound health benefits. Dr. Tan actually discusses some of his primary research that he and his team of scientists are doing on how this special form of vitamin E, along with this new compound called GG that he's effectively using in clinical trials to do everything from helping combat cancers to improving lipids and cholesterol levels to decreasing fatty liver and reducing inflammation, even using it to help reduce weight. He covers all of his research in this amazing conversation. And I originally stumbled upon Dr. Tan around a year ago where I saw him interviewed on another great health podcast. And I was just blown away at some of the nuance of this stuff, right? I mean, I know here in the podcast, we're talking about a lot of these big picture pieces, like getting our nutrition to be simple and sustainable, moving our bodies and exercising and the right kinds of mindset things. Well, when it comes to this world of health, this stuff, as you know, is like super deep. And there's even some nuances on different forms of vitamins. Like in this case, this discussion today on vitamin E, that could be a game changer for your health. So I'm excited to bring this conversation with Dr. Barrie Tan. I mean, he's a real expert in this space, and he's just a really charming man and a guy who's just doing a lot to promote wellness on the front of vitamin E. So if you never thought about vitamin E before, you're going to learn a lot today. And I think you might even be inspired at the end of this to check out some of Dr. Tan's supplements. He runs a company called American River Nutrition that actually sources the finest source of this special vitamin E that he's going to talk about in today's episode. My wife took it during pregnancy. So we recently just gave birth to a baby girl, Brooke Balduzzi. And throughout pregnancy, I had her actually take Dr. Tan's supplement because I think it is that powerful for her health. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Dr. Barrie Tan. I know you're going to love this one, and you're certainly going to learn a lot about vitamin E. Dr. Barrie Tan, welcome officially to the Fit Father Project and the Fit Mother Project podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Dr. Anthony. Great to be on your show. And hopefully this will be a very instructive and useful information to the audience that have been faithfully following you.
It no doubt will be. And I think this is going to be a really cool episode, probably one of our most unique episodes, because we've never had a actual primary investigating scientific expert on here to talk about a vitamin E, that you've dedicated pretty much the large part of your life to studying. And now it almost begs the question, if one man is to study vitamin E for over 30, 40 years now, what fascinated you so much about vitamin E? And tell everyone listening what vitamin E even does. Some people may be familiar, some people may not. So let's start high level, then we'll kind of drill down on how vitamin E might be one of the key things to do to have a good anti-aging and longevity.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that lead-in. Vitamin E is known as a vitamin discovered by two scientists in University of California, Berkeley, 100 years ago, exactly, 1922. And they discovered vitamin E has the ability to prevent the growing fetus to able to allow the fetus to go to full term. That's the reason for the vitamin E. Most people today don't know vitamin E as that. That was the reason. Most people today, however, know that vitamin E is an antioxidant. It's an antioxidant because our body have 38 trillion cells, about 5,000 times the population of the earth. And all cell must have cell wall, and a tocotrienol structure look like that. Our flash look like that, like this. And then if I put the back here on, see that? The black color is the carbon, hydrogen. So it's very lipid soluble. Yeah. So if you think of the whole box where my face is the cell membrane. So this stick into the cell membrane. If any part of the fatty acid is oxidized, and then the antioxidant will grab the oxygen and then make it whole again. That's it. And now the audience is probably aware of and probably sparse because you hear about everything in the universe. People talk about antioxidant. I want to help you to cut to the chase on it. Yes, there are many things that antioxidant, but I care most about on antioxidant that protect the fat. Why is that? First, we have about 30% fat in our body. If you don't believe me, you put a stick of butter in your Phoenix area out in the sun, and you come back even 1 or 2 hours later and you smell it, that's the oxidation of fat. If you drive past a roadkill and you smell it, you know exactly what I mean. So the first thing to go bad is the fat. And therefore, the antioxidant I care about most would be the one that protect the cell membrane because loaded in the cell membrane are all fat. And you probably encourage your audience to eat a lot of omega-3 fish oil. And omega-3 fish oil is very oxidizable. And eventually they end up in the cell wall. So you need the vitamin E to protect that. That is a kind, not other wonderful antioxidant like resveratrol, lycopene, astaxanthin, lutein. There are many out there like that. They are good, but they do not land in the cell membrane to protect the cell membrane. So that is a very fascinating to me, very basic, and it's not even intervening any disease, just to protect the cell wall because the cell is a gated community. They only allow good thing, nutrient to go in and waste to go out. Otherwise, why is it a gated community, a good one? Because inside the cell is your nucleus. It protects your DNA. It's got the mitochondria that make the energy using ATP, like CoQ10. If that is compromised, well, then everything else will follow suit. It's not a good idea. So
that's a beautiful introduction. And I kind of want to take a minute to recap because I want to make sure everyone gets this first key point before we kind of proceed even deeper into the discussion. We have trillions of cells, and they are filled with this phospholipid fatty bilayer, this outer bilayer. And those fats are sensitive to becoming oxidized, to having this, you can think of oxidation, I guess, as damage in a very like simple sense. But these vitamin E's, these tocotrienols, these special kinds of vitamins, wedge themselves into the cells, and they have tails that can come down and basically help prevent oxidation in these special fats, and then we function better as a result. Is that a decent summary?
It's just you did it perfectly. Okay. Wonderful.
Okay, so now let's get into this because this is where I think the conversation is really interesting, where a lot of like medical experts, scientific, a lot of people don't know there's different forms of vitamin E. And oftentimes when we look at supplements and a supplement may have vitamin E or we see vitamin E in food, it comes in different forms than this very special form of vitamin E that you've been studying, which is tocotrienol. So give us a quick primer on the different kinds of vitamin E and why tocotrienol is the really exciting one when it comes to these biological effects.
Okay, for vitamin E, there are 4 tocopherols and 4 tocotrienol. And then they have the Greek letter alpha, beta, delta, gamma, tocotrienol, and alpha, beta, delta, gamma, tocopherol. The one that is most well known is alpha tocopherol. And people know that, and you can buy them everywhere. Now, of the 8, the 2 that is most potent, and because hundreds of papers have been published on this, is delta tocotrienol and gamma tocotrienol. If you just type delta tocotrienol in the Google search, you'll know exactly what I mean. The 2 most potent is delta and gamma. The one that is best known is alpha tocopherol, and like that. But the alpha tocopherol we can get from our diet. These 2, the most potent one, is difficult. And then now I explained that. Let me tell you that I love to do this. I think it's a good segue. About 25 years ago, a much younger me, see that? I was in South America looking at marigold. Why did I do that? I want to tell you this. This is almost an unusual finding of me. The year was 1994. There was a famous ophthalmologist at Harvard, and she discovered that in the back of the retina here, where the fovea is right at the highest pixelation that I'm looking at people here, have a lot of zeaxanthin, and flanking out here are the lutein. And she thought that lutein and zeaxanthin, which is a carotene, is able to filter out the blue light. And today everybody knows you take lutein and zeaxanthin to prevent macular degeneration. I went to South America, and I know that the giant marigold petal will have this. You see, it was a younger me. I did that. So remember, I went there to look for this. Then About 30 feet away from me, I found this plant, beautiful annatto plant, like that. If you look at it carefully, if I touch it, it will stain. So this is the only few carotenoids that I know that actually stain and is not contained. For example, you would expect beta carotene in carrot in the cytoplasm. You cannot stain yourself on it until you rub and disrupt the cytoplasm. And if you were to take Italian sauce, then you will not easily get the lycopene out of the tomato unless you actually abrupt it.
Yeah.
If you live in New England, a yucky green lobster or blue shrimp, you cook them, the protein deproteinate, and then you got the beautiful astaxanthin. See? So carotene is normally protected.
Yeah.
Not so in the carotene of this. It stains it, and the British call this annatto plant the lipstick plant because of the staining color. So I knew then because it's not protected, something must be protecting this carotene. I thought it was a polyphenol, like many of the antioxidants. Then surprising to me, this is truly the discovery. Surprising to me, it is not a polyphenol. More surprising to me, it did not contain any tocopherol. And most surprising to me, it only contained tocotrienol and the two most potent one, delta tocotrienol, gamma tocotrienol. Then, I went to South America to look for lutein and zeaxanthin. This is actually a sharp left turn on something else. So, and this is in the Amazonia. Look, this is an Amazonian plant. Look at this frog here, like that.
Yeah.
The frog is about a size of a dime, and this thing here is about the size of a grape seed. So, and the Amazonian tree frog is first discovered only in the 1980s or 70s. So, therefore, this plant is true of the Amazonia, mostly grown in the tropics. You can only find this grow in the United States if you go to Hawaii or if you go to certain botanical garden inside. Ask them for annatto plant or the lipstick plant, and they probably show you. But for me, it is actually a spiritual moment. And then from then on, I left the lutein and zeaxanthin, not because it's unimportant, because I went back to pursue the tocotrienol in my discovery from this plant.
That's so cool. And I want to kind of give my summary of this as we go along too. You basically we'll use the word vitamin A, but these carotenoids that many people are familiar with are, related to vitamin A and beta carotene being a form of that. So you went to go look for what we call carotenoids in vitamin A, but then you find that in this very special plant, the annatto plant, that has this coloration that seems to be outside, not inside the cell wall. And you're like, why could that possibly be? How is it not being oxidized? And then you discover that these tocotrienols, the two potent forms, are there protecting these carotenoids, making them bioavailable. And now you're like, wow, this is something special and unique you don't find very often. Let's start to explore this deeply. And then you discover some of these biological effects in a deeper way, or really like look into them more. Is that a fair summary?
That is a very fair summary. So all that to say, even though the story is true, is that I went there to look for something else, and somehow my attention is redirected to this. I was already studying tocotrienol, so it is kind of like an accidental find to the learned scientist, like that. But however, when I found this source is unique. Previous to this, Dr. Anthony, I have found 3 sources of tocotrienol. In the plant kingdom, they are tocopherol abound. But for tocotrienol, you only can find 3 in 3 places, and I discovered all of them. The first one I discovered was on palm oil, and the other one on rice bran oil, and then I stopped the research. So the audience doesn't know, why did you stop the research if you know tocotrienol is good? Because rice and palm contain about 25 to 50% tocopherol, and I can't separate the tocopherol. So when I did the research, I found that the tocopherol supposedly to be innocuous, but they were not innocuous. They actually put brakes on the function of tocotrienol. So then I have a functional problem. So therefore, I segue to do carotenoid. And then I found out from this annatto, and the annatto, listen carefully, annatto is the only source of vitamin E in nature, unadulterated, that is tocopherol free. So right now, I found a source that would not put brakes on the function of tocotrienol. Immediately, I called the father of modern day tocotrienols research, and he was a professor at the time at University of Wisconsin Madison. And then I remember distinctive what he said, Barrie, if tocotrienol would mitigate human chronic conditions, this anato tocotrienol better do. If it does not, all of our research have gone away. So that was probably in 1989, 1990. And since then, my entire life have been arrested to do research, both in animal study and later the 20 clinical trials in tocotrienol, and would love to pursue that as you asked me a question on that.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that now. I think it's a perfect segue to actually looking at some of the evidence that you found from all your research that this is beneficial, and to spell out maybe some mechanisms that you either have seen directly or hypothesize about why it's so effective. And the antioxidant capacity in the lipid bilayer is probably going to be the thing we kind of come back to. But what have you found? Like, why would people care to go down this rabbit hole of like starting to supplement with something like tocotrienol? What are the actual benefits, whether it's on chronic disease or just improving memory or just overall health and function? Like, let's start talking about some of the research you find most compelling and stuff you like to share on the science front.
Okay, and I never get to answer the difference between a tocopherol and tocotrienol. A tocopherol and tocotrienol look like a sperm, look like a tadpole. It's got a head, which is the antioxidant part, and then a tail. Imagine this. This would be the shape of a tocopherol. The head is the same, and then the tail is this long. A tocotrienol, I purposely blocked the pencil. It will be slightly shorter. So because it's slightly shorter, when it sticks into the cell membrane, it's able to move around the cell membrane 50 times faster than tocopherol. Right. So I usually like to capture that as vitamin E captures the bad guy. A tocopherol, because it's deeper anchor into the membrane, it's like a local police in a town, capture the bad guys. And a tocotrienol would be like a state trooper across the whole state to capture, able to surfacially cover a larger surface area. That is just the description of the molecule. Now, as to the function, me and other people have published probably about 500 over papers out there in animal study first. And I'm not the only one, so let's be clear. And then the chronic conditions are lipidemia, high fat, high cholesterol, and then metabolic syndrome that are pre-diabetic. And then we also study diabetes, and then fatty liver disease, this cluster of chronic conditions like that, and obesity like that. And then the other one, time permitting, and I was just stricken in my heart. Of the 500 to 700 published study, initially it was about 1/3 of that. And eventually it became even like half. Of those studies were not the one I mentioned to you. They were on cancer. Cancer is largely thought of as a chronic condition, except for childhood cancer, which is, blood-borne cancer and brain cancer. Otherwise, most of the hundreds of cancer are also aging. Time permitting, I can cover the clinical study we're doing on cancer. That is kind of like a little bit off on left field like that. I decided to do that because half of the study is on it, and I jolly well know the FDA will never allow me approval, but I did that because I want to prove to myself it worked on it. However, later. On the one that I mentioned to you, we did all the animal study, the metabolic syndrome, the lipidemia like that. Then eventually I got to do clinical study. Now, clinical study, you have to choose your battle because they cost so much money and they take such a long time. They are not guinea pigs. They are people. So when you do study with people, it had to be well controlled. You got to do it right. Otherwise it won't work like that. So we have done clinical study. I'll mention it to you, and then you can decide, okay, Dr. Tan, can you talk about this one or this one or this one? Okay. We have decided to do it on lipidemia first, on triglyceride and cholesterol. Later, we segue to pre-diabetes, the early stages of metabolic syndrome. We also study people with diabetes, already have high sugar, and we have very a long study, almost over 8 years, on 3 clinical trials on people with fatty liver disease. It's about 30% of Americans have this silent disease. And we also study postmenopausal women with osteopenia, and also study 50 something, 60 something year old men and women who are obese. So those are all the different chronic conditions that we study. So now I pass it back on to you. You can just pick and choose which one you like.
For
me
sure.
to
And I'd like to actually quickly go through most of those because I think they're relevant to everyone listening. But let's start with like the hyperlipidemia, someone who goes to their doctor and they get lab work that comes back that says they have high triglycerides. Maybe they have certain patterns of high LDL, low HDL. Like, how does it affect blood lipids if you do take something like a tocotrienol? What have you found from your research?
Okay. The typical lower lipid cholesterol lowering is statin drugs. It inhibit a pathway. We call it the mevalonic acid pathway. Just think of that pathway as Interstate 95. There are no interstate more traffic than Interstate 95. It's 1 in 3 people drive on that interstate. The cholesterol pathway synthesis is that because all cells need cholesterol to live. It's just too much cholesterol give us heart problem and arteriosclerosis problem, and that happens. So they invented this drug to inhibit at the very top. Think of interstate and Maine to Florida. They go after the cholesterol thing at Boston exit. So and then the cholesterol thing is about New York City, somewhere there, and then it lower. This image is relatively correct like that. And then inhibit, and then cholesterol drop. Tocotrienol work also on this, on C15, not C5, somewhere like in New Haven, somewhere there. It inhibit, not in the sense to lock it up like statin does, but statin locks it up and the cholesterol lower about 40-50%. The tocotrienol thing in New Haven kind of like dial it down. So when it dial it down, so the cholesterol would drop, not as dramatic as statin. So you see the cholesterol drop like 15-20%. Nothing to sneeze at, but it's not like a drug working without any side effects. So that's how the tocotrienol lower the cholesterol by dialing down the enzyme to make the cholesterol.
Nice. And that's really good news. Have you seen people take a statin with tocotrienol together? Has that been studied?
That has been studied as early as in the late 1990s. And basically that study showed that if you take statin, it'll drop about 20%. If you take, that is the first generation of statin. And then if you take that with tocotrienol, then it would drop another 5-10% more. So then the scientists said that you can talk to your doctor. Maybe you can titrate down your statin intake and then take tocotrienol with your statin with lower dose of statin.
And some people who take statins complain, there's myalgias, there's certain things that can happen, maybe some decreases in, for men, testosterone levels. Is this something that tocotrienol is free from? Do we know that? Do we have any data on any of that aspect of it? Does it affect hormones in the same way that statins may?
I will try to answer that question in the way that CoQ10 is dropped or not. Because it's well known, again, if the statin inhibit at Boston, tocotrienol work in New Haven, and then the cholesterol synthesis is in New York City, Sagway this way, and then CoQ10 is further down. So when people take statin drug, CoQ10 drop, everybody knows this, so we supplement CoQ10. And when we did the tocotrienol study, we checked for people's CoQ10, and we noticed that the CoQ10 did not drop, and nobody in all our clinical trials subsequent to this ever complained about possibility of myopathy or any other side effects. But now that you mentioned the myopathy thing, I will say this. Down here, where the CoQ10 is made, the body makes 5 carbon at a time. So the statin inhibit at 5 carbon, 10 carbon, 15 carbon is where cholesterol is made. And then 20 carbon, there's the compound in 20 carbon in the human body. It's called geranol. I'll just acronymize it to GG. Later, I can give you my website. You can download all the papers to read. GG. This compound GG, I'm gonna move away now. So
Yeah.
you can see this is the compound GG here. See the tail here? The plant uses this GG to make the tocotrienol. So as if I was not blessed enough to discover tocotrienol in this beautiful annatto plant that I show you, when I extracted removed the color and extracted the tocotrienol, I still found that there is about a few percent of something look yellowish, light orangey color. And then I was curious, I found this thing. Then now the plant used this to make vitamins like vitamin E, like vitamin K, and vitamin A, like that. The plant used it. This is just really spiritual to me. In the human body, we make this compound. In the human body, is unable to use this compound to synthesize vitamin E, K, or A, or D like this.
Really? However, so plants can, but humans can't use GG to build these things.
Correct. But however, in human, we use this compound to make the compound behind me much longer tail. That is coenzyme Q10. Everybody in the audience notice, if you look at the black and white, that's the entire tail of CoQ10 all the way to the end there. There is about 2.5 GG stitched onto the whole tail of CoQ10 to do this. So did you actually understood what I said? No supplement makes CoQ10. And GG is used endogenously, means inside your body to make CoQ10.
So you can supplement with GG and get CoQ10 increases. So this is probably the first supplement that you've ever seen as a precursor to CoQ10, effectively.
Right. That is right. And right now you piece it all together. People take statin drug, cholesterol lower, and CoQ10 lower. So we supplement CoQ10. But nobody ever explained to you or to me, to us, why if you take statin drug, CoQ10 drop. The reason when we take statin drug, CoQ10 drop is because GG, statin inhibit GG synthesis. And because it inhibit GG, there is not available GG to make CoQ10. Therefore, CoQ10 drop. Now, some of the audience know CoQ10, the scientific word is ubiquinone. And it's called ubiquinone because it's ubiquitous in the body, all over our body. So right now, let me propose to the audience. The reason CoQ10 is ubiquitous is because GG is ubiquitous. This is such a blessing. I don't want to steal the thunder away. Can you imagine it? I'm stealing the thunder away from Tocotrienols, which I spent my whole life to study. And then because of my discovery of this thing, I'm so passionate. But I wanted to finish up the Tocotrienol, and maybe the last minute or two you can do about the GG thing like that. So for lipidemia, we gave people about 100 to 200 milligram, and the cholesterol would drop. But when that happened, Dr. Anthony, I noticed that these people with high cholesteremia, the triglyceride also dropped. And I remember triglyceride drop is important for people that have metabolic syndrome, which means pre-diabetes and diabetes. So then we decided, okay, now that I got the lipidemia piece, then I'm going to the second piece. So I'm looking at people with a metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, but they are not yet diabetic. That means that the sugar is normal high, but not super high, but the triglyceride is normal high and somewhat high. And then, so we have this normal high sugar, quite high triglyceride. So we gave them tocotrienol like that, and the triglyceride dropped dramatically, and actually the sugar dropped a little bit. I can see the balance is coming back into kilter. And then I thought, this is great, because 90 million Americans have a pre-diabetic. Then encouraged by this is everything I talk about take me 2 to 3 years. They add up. It's a long time coming. Then I decided to do diabetic study. So now the sugar have gone up the roof. And then they are also taking medication to lower the sugar like that. The triglyceride also is high. So when we did that, we found that the the sugar drop and the triglyceride drop, but I was not satisfied, Dr. Anthony, that the sugar drop. I need to know that the insulin is responsive. That's asking a lot. So therefore, I study a marker called Homer IR. Homer IR is hemostatic insulin resistant. So it's a measurement for both the sugar drop, like the overnight fasting sugar, as well as the improvement of the insulin. And we found that the Homer IR drop. So I know the insulin is activated. So then I said, wow, this is as good as it can get. How much were this patient given? They were given, the lowest dose was about 250 milligram, and the high dose is about 400 milligram on this diabetic study.
And is that once per day, twice per day? Is it taken with a fatty meal? Does it matter?
Okay. Always taken with a fatty meal. If you take it on an empty stomach, then less than half will be absorbed. So it's a waste. So take it with a fatty meal, and then how much? Take it twice. Up to 300 milligram, you can take it all at once. So if you have 400 milligram, you take it twice a day. And typically, I take mine with lunch and dinner. And why would I take it? I'm a small size guy, but I have genetic hypercholesterolemia. So I wanted to take it because it also low. Oh, I forgot to tell these people. Oh, I'm so glad. When I did this, I knew that these people who are pre-diabetic and diabetic have systemic inflammation. Right. So we measure the C-reactive protein and the interleukin 6, and you can clearly see physiologically it calmed down the inflammation in the body. But I will leave the last piece last. After this, I decided to go for the biggest one. About 25 to 30% of the American population have fatty liver. Who would have guessed 30 years ago, when people have cirrhotic liver, is because of over drinking of alcohol. And today, we have people liver looking like people who have consumed over excess of alcohol, but have nothing to do with alcohol. It has to do with seriously heavy fat, enough that this condition is called NAFLD. It just acronized for, it's a lengthy word, but you got the gist when I say the name of the...
Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Yeah, so basically having scarred, hurt livers, no presence of alcohol. It's from our diet, obviously, and what we're ingesting, from a high sugar content and a high fat content. Yes. And then this liver, so people know, it's like we had the idea it's like it helps detoxify things. Yes, it does, but it's one of our main metabolic organs that helps maintain our blood sugar. It helps, process all these different kinds of things. When the liver becomes fatty, it just doesn't work well. And then all this stuff starts to happen. So take us away on how vitamin E and tocotrienol interfaces with this story.
Wow, this is you said that it makes the liver not able to work well. I'll come back to that, and I'll give you a reason when the tocotrienol fixes the liver, how it works well, and it has to do with weight loss. But I'll wait that last. So we decided to do clinical trial on people with fatty liver. We did a 3-month study. So we did the usual measurement about triglyceride, insulin, sugar, because all these are a little bit out of kilter like that, and inflammation. So after 3 months, we found out that, okay, the liver enzyme, AST, ALT come down, their stress liver enzyme, they come down, C-reactive protein, all these come down like that. See, normally people would just talk about this. We have so many data proving this so fantastic. It will be insane if a person who has it will not take this, But just a 3-month study. So I told my scientists working with me, I'm good with this, but I need it to be sustainable. Why did I ask the question? Because the liver is the largest solid organ in our body. So I need this to be shown. So then I committed to another study for 6 months. The 3-month study is finished, published. Then I do the 6-month study. It did the same thing. So the same thing as stress liver enzyme, but in the 6-month study, we did more. We did steatosis. We used to scan the liver. The fat went out. We also did a little bit of fibrosis study. When there's too much fat in the liver, then there's scarring tissue in the liver. And when you have scarring tissue, it's beginning not to be reversible like that. So we did that. And mostly we know that the fat removed from the liver, which is good. Usually when you take too much fat, the fat fluxes into the liver, and then the liver then form a triglyceride fat, and they're not getting out, and then the liver becomes fatty. That's how, and then toxic thing begin to accumulate in the liver. So, but I noticed in the 6-month study, I actually was not wanting to deal with this with all honesty. We saw that the patient lost about 15 to 17 pounds. And then I look at the data, it was statistically significant. Then I went back to the 3-month study, they lost about 12 pounds. Then I said, and then my scientist said, well, Dr. Tan, I think this tocotrienol have weight loss. He said, no, I don't want to use that word, because when people do weight loss, it's 2 weeks to 4 weeks, but this is 3 months and 6 months. Don't use that because I don't want to be deceiving the audience. But then I said, okay, I'm willing to do a 1-year study. This took me 2 years to do the 1-year study because it's during the COVID time, and it took so long and recruit people. We did that, Dr. Anthony, and we literally just published this last month. So in the 12-month study, this time we did all the things that I told you we did, plus we have CAT scan. We don't want to miss anything to look at the liver as well as the spleen behind the liver, and the CAT scan allow us to do this. So we saw all the parameters I told you, the inflammation reduced, the liver enzymes drop, the oxidized fat drop, inflammation decrease, fibrosis drop, septosis drop. And then again, we noticed the weight loss. Then the weight loss this time is about 12 pounds. So consistently, now I can say a time-dependent study from 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, that the patient lost no less than 12 to 15 pounds. So for me, whether that is, I still do not consider it a weight loss, but I consider it this way. When they took the tocotrienol, the liver is coming back to balance. As the liver is coming back to balance and working properly, it affects the body storage of fat, not only in the liver, in the whole body system. And then we saw the weight loss. So for me, that is kind of icing on the cake. In the design of the study, we did not expect the weight loss. And I consider that the weight loss because the body metabolism is coming back into balance, into kilter, and therefore even the lost weight also happened. That is really a blessing.
That's a beautiful result. And I love what you're sharing. It's effectively, it's a weight loss as a byproduct of things working better, the body restoring to balance. It's not like it's thermogenic or necessarily increasing calorie burn per se. It's just helping everything function better, which the body is then able to have a healthier metabolism. In weight loss is potentially like just a byproduct of this, or it is clearly shown in your study. I want to talk about another important organ. I think it becomes more important as we age, and that's the organ upstairs right here. We have this brain, which is largely filled with fat. There's a lot of fatty tissue in the brain. I imagine that vitamin E, and particularly the tocotrienol form, has some benefits on cognition. I couldn't see how it wouldn't. Have you done any research on that, on like memory, cognition? And we see such an increase these days of, whether it's dementia, Alzheimer's, memory impairment, cognitive decline as we age. I know a lot of people listening are thinking about, how do I keep my mind sharp with age? Is there anything around the vitamin E story that you feel like interfaces with this and can help?
We ourselves didn't do the study. Japanese scientists and other people have. And what they had noticed is they gave animal high-fat diet, and they noticed that the tocotrienol is able to improve the memory of the high-fat. Apparently, the high-fat diet is not the omega-3, but the brain is supposed to have omega-3. They have high-fat diet, kind of like simulating metabolic syndrome. And then they found out that the rat is able to have improved memory on that.
In the presence of a high-fat diet, which is interesting when you look at research high-fat diets, because that might not mean the same thing like a human high-fat diet. It's effectively a high-fat diet. It's a diet that will cause weight gain or model, an unhealthy standard American diet, which means it has fat, but it also typically have quite a bit of sugar in those high-fat diets too, right? Or carbohydrate. What's the proportion? Is it like 50% sugar, 30% fat, 20% protein, something like that? Do you know off the top of your head?
Oh, I did not know. I remember that they say they design. Sometime I've seen study that design high fat and high carb diet, but this one may be high fat. I don't remember if it was high carb diet. We have done other study with high fat and high carb, meaning sugar like that, and in that we saw tocotrienol impact on the weight gain of the rat. But the most distinctive thing I remember from those animal study was that when they gave tocotrienol to this high carb, high fat diet, they distinctively lower the severity of the inflammation. So that probably is an oxidative protection because they are, you can almost touch the animal and then their temperature are warmer. Because they're just seriously inflamed. You can feel it by the increase in temperature. And other people have did other segue animal study that we didn't pursue. For example, they use tocotrienol and they reduce the inflammation and increase the airway. So that people can imagine this in the COVID time, what that could be a benefit of. Those study were studying asthma, cigarette smoke, and allergenic response from cat and other animal from their protease enzyme that they smell from it. So but they're mostly lung related, allergenic related, and that kind of situation can certainly be compounded in our pandemic situation like that. So we didn't pursue those, but we read other people doing those kind of studies.
Got it. Okay, so I want to kind of bring this a little full circle. We have vitamin E. You can find certain forms of vitamin E's, typically those tocopherols, in nuts, seeds, to vegetables, oils, certain animal foods. It's right to say from your research that tocotrienols, particularly the two forms, I believe it's the delta and the gamma, are the heavy hitters, and they're pretty much not found in foods. I mean, in very little amounts. They're in rice bran, they're in palm oil, but they also are in annatto is really where you find them in massive abundance, along with GG.
Yes.
So I think this is an interesting scenario we're at here, because normally good nutrition advice would be eat a colorful diet, eat good, wide range of different kinds of foods, mostly non-processed, and you're going to get health benefits. But this seems like a scenario where to really reap the benefits of the research you're doing, you would need to supplement. You would need to go out of your way, unless you have some way to get annatto and you're not around that and you incorporate that into your foods. Like, supplementing is the way to kind of get some of these benefits. Speak to that, please. And I know you personally take your supplements, and this is a caveat too. I told you this before we hopped on, is I heard one of your interviews maybe almost like a year ago, and I was so blown away that through my wife's last pregnancy, we had her taking the tocotrienols, your specific supplement, the Delta Gold, the whole time, because when something's growing, right? We know the vitamin E research on full-term babies, but when something's growing, you could use all the lipid support possible. So is this something that people need to supplement, and how expensive is it to supplement with something like this? And another question in there to throw one more in here to see if you can remember all this stuff. What supplements do you take for your own longevity and well-being besides, probably your GGs and your proper form of vitamin E?
Okay, I'll answer the first part. When you take a normal, what is normal, right? People ask, an American diet, we typically would get about 10 milligram or about 15 milligram of alpha tocopherol just from your normal diet for that part of the vitamin E tocopherol. On the tocotrienol, based on an American diet, probably 2 to 5 milligram, just eating from food like that.
Yeah.
You can find tocotrienol small amount in nuts like corn, avocado, pistachio, like this. So in the American diet, and we don't consume a lot of palm oil, although some food are made with palm oil, you have more. And rice bran oil is a well-kept secret. Japanese make tempura with rice bran oil, and they have more. And mostly they make the tempura because it's crispy, but the tocotrienol protect
the frying process.
Not like the frying process.
That's interesting.
So that's that part there. If you're in South America, where the people use a lot of annatto like that, in the West, by the way, we use annatto for coloring cheese. So the next time when you go to Trader Joe or Whole Food, the cheese with yellowish orangey hue, that's probably annatto. So it's not a strange plant. We use it since time memorial. But people not talk about the tocotrienol in it, but still it's a small amount. If you eat South American food, although there's a lot of carbs, so it's always checkered. If you see Mexican rice, you see that they're looking a little orangey color, so they probably have annatto in it. And if you were to go to any Hispanic store, and if they do not understand when you say the word annatto, just use a Spanish word. They'll instantly know. It's called achote. ACUITE, achote. Then they'll show you a bag. It's relatively inexpensive, and you go online, you can learn how to cook all kinds of Spanish-related food. So if you were to be in South America, you probably could get about 5 to 10 milligram from it because of the abundant use of annatto, not common in the West here except for cheese coloring. So in a normal person taking it for antioxidant health, like cell membrane I mentioned to you, depending on the weight of the person, this is a generalized number, 100 to 200 milligram for antioxidant protection. So if I have mild chronic condition, or I have a family history of this and that, my parents are this, my brother, sister have this, then probably anywhere from 3 to 400 milligrams. These are round numbers. And if I have a serious chronic condition, I described a few in our clinical trials, then they're probably more like 400 to 600 milligrams. So I give you a range. Now, I know you didn't ask this, and I didn't answer that what supplement I take. I will do that like that. I just want to put in 1 or 2 minutes thing on talk on cancer. Cancer is a dreaded big C word, and no, we don't want to deal with it. We hope that all of us can dodge the bullet. We're healthy, and even dodging the bullet, we also have to dodge the bullet of our genetic makeup that could also default into cancer. It's just really like that. There were 1/3 and become half of all the animal study say that tocotrienol is massively able to kill the cancer. And when I read, and then I'm making tocotrienol, and then I decided that I'm going to put my own money to find out in clinical study to see if tocotrienol would mitigate cancer or not. And even if I do, and if it works, I still will never get FDA approval. But I didn't care. I need to know. So I didn't. That is a will of me. And then the star lineup, the chief oncologist in Denmark, nobody in the US, in Denmark, he was wanting to do studies, and many of his patients would take experimental drugs, and then when they will not work, and then they pass away, and then the surviving spouse would get reimbursed from the government. This is not allowed in the US, but they're allowed there. So in other words, they waste a whole bunch of money anyway, and then for drugs that didn't work, experiment. So he decided to do that. So right now, we have in Denmark about 6 to 8 ongoing, some finished, some aborted, clinical trials. And it probably cost the government $15 million for which we didn't pay. But I have to provide the medicine. And the medicine does cost me to provide it to them, make it in the proper way for them. These patients take 900 milligram, 300 milligram each for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. What are the cancers we study? These are clinical trials. We are studying stage 4 cancer patients, which means that there are no more available options, and most of them would not live. So just remember the context. They're not stage 1, 2, 3, stage 4, but no option. They've gone everywhere like that. So we study 4 cancers: ovarian, breast, lung, and colon. Yes, we can do more, but we are only studying these 4.
Very common cancers,
Very common cancer. Right now, the ovarian cancer is done. We're waiting for the other cancer, probably in another year or 2. What result did we get on the ovarian cancer? They are given anti-angiogenic drugs. So these are the drugs that prevent the tumor from growing any bigger. And the second group, they took anti-angiogenic drug and tocotrienol. That's the only design that is allowed, that is ethical, because they cannot stop taking the anti-angiogenic drug. Fine. So 6 months after the study, the one that take the angiogenic drug, probably the life have been extended for a bit. There are no more. So it's a pretty harsh reality, but they're stage 4. And for those, in addition, that took the 900 milligram, 60% still living.
Wow.
And they decided to pursue on that. And after 2 years, 25% still living. So for me, that is not a home run, but it is still a win. That means that, and it's known that tocotrienol is anti-angiogenic. I know time doesn't permit me like that. You can Google. And when a tumor is growing, they consume a lot of nutrients. So they build this funny blood vessel and suck up blood vessel nearby artery. So it's new growth of blood artery. They're aberrant blood vessel. And the tocotrienol come in, they chop this thing off. So when they chop it off, so the artery cannot feed the tumor, essentially they're starving the tumor to death. That is the mechanism of an anti-angiogenesis tocotrienol provide. So we are grateful. And my colleague in Florida is doing pancreatic cancer. And we're hoping that he can also do the colon cancer in Florida as well. These studies are not yet afoot, but we are still in the works. So that is the tocotrienol piece. For the remaining time, hopefully you ask me some question about GG.
Well,
and
let's go with GG. Let's go to GG. I have one quick question. I don't want to. The answer might be complicated, so if it takes more than 1 minute, let's just go straight to GG. The question is how. It's amazing to me that a particular molecule like tocotrienol would be able to have an anti-angiogenic property in a cancer cell, but doesn't affect healthy tissue. Like, how do these things like work and differentiate? Why is it not anti-angiogenic all over the place? And maybe it's just the environment of the cancer where particularly like it interacts that way, but it's just fascinating to me how it has like a very specific effect in tissue that's not growing healthy, but in other contexts, it's actually protecting the lipid bilayer, creating healthy arteries, and it's not, breaking down tissue, right? So I don't know if you...
A short answer would be that they actually try... That question you asked is fantastically insightful. They deliberately put tocotrienol in normal cells and nothing happened. The animal did not get stunted, you see, because they will just be emaciated, nothing like that. They believe that when tumor grow like this, they are very aberrant. They are not ordinary. So they have control system that make the tumor grow. So the tocotrienol work to dial down and control that tumor growth. But in normal growth, that control is what they call growth and apoptosis. Normal growth. And then when it normal growth, they do not bring about apoptosis. It just let it grow to the normal life. If the cell is meant to grow 6 months before they die, then it stays 6 months before they die. But in angiogenic growth of cell thing, they grow like mad, They're supposed to grow. So then they stop the growth and kill the cell like that. But another time, if you interview me again, in the case of psoriasis, in the case of wound healing, that is normal. You want angiogenesis because if there's no angiogenesis, and tocotrienol is known to have wound healing and actually wound healing, which is supporting angiogenesis like that. And so, but that will take another. Those are things, if I live long enough, God willing, I will probably put more resources to do more of those studies. But before we go to the GG, let me answer this question. Personally, I take a natural multi that does not have normal tocopherol and designed for health made a multi that does not have tocopherol like that. I take tocotrienol because it's good for my cell wall protection in my body. And then I take CoQ10 because it protects me as I grow older in my cardiovascular health. So those are the main one I take. Of course, in addition to that, I take fish oil because I cannot consume enough omega-3. And then beyond that, periodically, I take some resveratrol like that. So those are the added on. But the 3-4 main one are CoQ10, tocotrienol, a multi that does not contain tocopherol like that. And GG to prevent me from having any sarcopenia because of muscle. I know you're going to ask about that.
Well, let's go. Let's talk about GG. And again, to kind of make sure everyone's kind of caught up, is GG is this building block that our bodies use to make CoQ10 and these other, which is, again, ubiquinone, ubiquitously found in all cells. It helps with energy production. And it was spiritual for you because you found the GG were these Lego blocks of building up, and you found a source of it, and you found how important it is, and you understood how statins kind of block higher up in the pathway and cause problems. So let's get into GG. Like,
Okay.
where's the story get bigger, and let's get into the highlights of the GG
All right.
story.
If you can still hear me, as I show you, in the front here is a GG molecule, also from annatto, and in the back here is a large, long tail CoQ10 molecule. If you look at the tail, the black and white molecules here, so 2.5 lengths of the entire tail of CoQ10 comes from GG. I'm actually saying that if you take GG, or whether you take GG or not, the reason your body make CoQ10 is because of GG. And the reason when people take statin and then a CoQ10 drop is because it's on the same pathway. It inhibits GG and therefore CoQ10 drop. So you know that now, as we grow old, even if you don't take statin, if you grow old, older, when a person after 30 years old, 40, they begin to notice 50, 60, even more noticeable, they begin to have increased muscle mass loss. We should have about 40% muscle mass and the skeletal muscle protein like that, but they're lost. And nobody seems to explain why, and everybody is taking copious amount of amino acid and protein. They are not necessarily bad, but GG is required for the making in the body of skeletal muscle protein. I'm saying as simplistically as I can. There are 3 things our body use GG to make that I know of, probably more in the future. One, the most important one, I believe, skeletal muscle protein synthesis, for which 40% weight it is. So in other words, you can do it resistively, physical exercise, which is a good thing to do, and then do that. So if you do physical exercise, it actually stimulates your body to make more GG. Therefore, you can do like that. So, but people don't have that narrative. The only narrative is protein,
Right, amino acids,
you see? So that's that part. And the second one, GG is required for the synthesis of CoQ10. I explained that to you. That is the energetics to give us energy. And the last one, like that, I don't have time to elaborate, but to let you know this. GG is required in the body for the synthesis of MK4. Everybody know we should be taking manoquinone 7, but not MK4. You should interview me another time sooner than later.
And this is vitamin K, really, is what we're talking about now. We're talking about a special subset of vitamin K. Yes.
Yeah. And this vitamin K is from GG, and manoquinone are made by fermentation in the gut.
Yeah.
The only manoquinone made in the human body all over is MK4. So MK4 is found in the body where CoQ10 is found in the body all over. And these two are found all over in the body because of GG. So if
GG is the connection point.
If you think of MK4 like strong bone, strong muscle, anti-calcification in the artery, because of manoquinone, is probably ending up because of GG. If they have GG, this will be mitigated. If they don't, calcification of the artery, weak bone, with low energy, and then clotting factor problem like that. So I am, to tell you how incredibly blessed I am to first found this plan to make tocotrienol, and then furthermore to further find GG, and we are the only company in the world, and we make it right here in United States. So and another time, I was not born in United States. I'm an immigrant here, though I've been here for a long time like that. And then I have many people asking me, why don't you make this in other countries? I said, no, this is not my country of birth, it's my country of adoption. I love the US. I'm going to make it here, and it's going to stay here. And then now I have the privilege to say that this GG and tocotrienol is made in United States, right here in Massachusetts, and this has huge blessing to people. If you go on our website, you either type my name, Barrie 10, spelled Barrie, or you go to American River Nutrition. You probably can download all the papers of GG, of tocotrienol, and we also make a product where the GG and CoQ10 put together. We call it dual quinol. So delta gold, GG Gold and Tocotrienols. That's it. We don't make anything else, and we don't even make finished product. If you go to the website, you list all the companies selling them. So if you want to buy Tocotrienol or buy vitamin E, make sure it is not tocopherol. And if it is Tocotrienol, make sure it say annatto Tocotrienol. And if you want to buy the one that made from us here in Massachusetts in the US, make sure in the back it say Delta Gold somewhere. That means that they make their brand, but they got it from Delta Gold. But if it's Tocotrienol, which is the CoQ10 and GG, or the GG Gold, we are the only company in the world making it now.
Well, was this a absolutely wonderful and informative presentation? I mean, thank you. I do think it's a privilege to be able to interview at this point in your career, having learned so much and yet also pushing so many exciting fronts. I wish you a beautiful next few years ahead, continuing to be a champion for the importance of tocotrienols and GG. I mean, this is literally the first time I'm learning about GG, so I'm really pumped up. And I know a lot of people listening will find this. I would encourage you, this conversation, this is the one you might want to listen to a couple times over and over to really let it sink in. And of course, there's going to be a link to American River Nutrition, your website, and all of this in the show notes, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on one of our podcast platforms. There's going to be links to Dr. Barrie Tan and all of your amazing stuff. Thank you for coming on, spending your time with us today, for doing all the amazing research. It's very clear to me that you're a man driven by tremendous passion. And I love that this has become a spiritual thing for you, like a deep calling forward of like epiphany and now sharing for the goodness of others. It makes me very happy. So thank you, Dr. Tan, so much. It's amazing to have you today.
Thank you so much. And if you want to download the book, it's free of charge. You can go online and then download it. The book that I show you here is A Labor of Love. But thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, all of you guys.
We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much, Dr. Tan.
Thank you.